Hello everyone and welcome back to my long PlayStation Mini Classic review. This is the final segment where I will be talking about games that begin with the letter W as in Walter, and also the only game in the PlayStation Mini library that is modified that begins with the letter Z and also is the final game in the entire library. Starting with, not to confuse you with the name of the 2005 film with Tom Cruise. And I think Tom Cruise started in that film, but this is War of the Worlds. Came out by GT Interactive in 1999. And we all know GT stands for Grand Tour, so. And next up we have another game that is based off of Jurassic Park. This is Warpath Jurassic Park. And this is a fighting game which you play as dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. And you know, speaking of Jurassic Park video games, as I mentioned before in my other part, I do have a Jurassic Park game for the Super Nintendo, that is, based off the 1993 film. And I remember renting this from the video store when I returned from summer camp one year. So, and move on now to WCW Mayhem, Electronic Arts in 1999. And that game came out during the downfall of WCW. And you know, back in 1999, aside from 1998, those were the first 2 years I started to watch wrestling. And now back then when they had guys like Goldberg, Hogan, the NWO. So, and back then when the NWO was living large in the WCW. And I used to play this game on the Nintendo 64. And I used to remember unlocking all the other wrestlers in the game. And I used to remember that I would also, and there is a way to unlock Chris Jericho in this game, even though Jericho is in WWF back then, now WWE. And that is to compete in all the backstage areas in the game. So the game is pretty decent, and I played the Nintendo 64 version. So moving on now to another WCW video, and also the last WCW game that came out, which is the next WCW video game that came out after Mayhem, which is the last WCW video game before it was sold by Vince McMahon in 2001. Backstage Assault is one of the worst wrestling games of all time. So, and the wrestler models look off model in Backstage Assault. So, moving on now to the first 3D WCW video game of all time, and also the prequel to, or also a precursor to WCW vs. the World and WCW NWO Revenge. This is WCW vs. the World, originally called Virtual Pro Wrestling in Japan, released by THQ in 1997. And this was the first 3D wrestling game, well, one of them, that was ever released. They have guys like Hogan, Sting, Flair, and they also have guys from Japan in this game. So, and I remember renting this game from the video store. So, and moving on now too, and it's a pretty decent game. So, but not as good as WCW Revenge was. So, but it's pretty decent. Okay, next up we have. But I'm kind of disappointed that with WCW vs. the World that Hall and Nash are not in the game. And you know, Hall and Nash are one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, both past and present. So, moving on now to a game that is made by the same company that made Clay Fighter. And you know, Clay Fighter is one of my favorite fighting games of all time on the Super Nintendo, called Wild 9. In 1998, and this is a side-scroller game. And on the label of the game, it says, torture your enemies. So, and I'm pretty sure this is a hard game, so. Moving on now to Williams Arcade Greatest Hits. Came out in 1996 by Williams Entertainment, the same company that made pinball games. It has Defender, Joust, and so on. And you know, I like classic arcade games from the 80s, like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, so. Okay, next up we have Wing Commander, released by Electronic Arts or EA Games in 1996. EA Sports. All right, so, and And also the lion on the cover art of Wing Commander 3 reminds me of Chewbacca. Yeah, he does look like Chewbacca a little bit. So, next up we have World League Soccer 99. Came out in 1998 by the same company I think made the Tomb Raider games. Eidos Interactive. Okay, next up we have Wu-Tang Shaolin Style, released by Activision in 1999. And I'm pretty sure this is a Mortal Kombat clone, and you know I like fighting games, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Tekken. Might have to give this game a try one day. And you know, back when I was a kid, my mother forbade me to play Mortal Kombat back when I was a kid. And next up we have the sequel to WWF Warzone, and also the last WWF, now WWE video game is released by Acclaim. This is WWF Attitude, released by the same company, Acclaim, in 1999. And it's a pretty good wrestling game. It's an updated version of WWF Warzone, but sadly, Bret Hart, British Bulldog, and Ahmed Johnson, who were previously included in WWF Warzone, have been removed. Well, due to Bret Hart and British Bulldog in WCW, jumping shift to WCW, and I think Ahmed Johnson retired that year. But I do remember Ahmed Johnson going to WCW back in 2000. So, and sadly, this is the last WWF game to feature Owen Hart, who sadly passed away due to a freak accident back in 1999 back when he was during a freak accident, I think before the pay-per-view that year. So, and it does have guys in this game like Stone Cold, The Rock, Mankind, Undertaker, Kane, and the list goes on, and also DX. So, and you know, this game also has Sergeant Slaughter, who is also a legend in the WWE. Well, back then when he was a commissioner. So, and next up we have WWF SmackDown. And this is the first WWF, or now WWE video game, one of the two that is released by THQ. And it's also one of my favorite PlayStation 1 games of all time. And it has guys like Stone Cold, The Rock, Mankind, Kane, Undertaker, DX. And the list goes on. And it's also the first WWF, now WWE video game, to feature the Dudley Boys, one of my favorite tag teams of all time. And I used to love playing this game when I came home from school, even the preseason mode. But sadly, there are no unlockable wrestlers in this game. The wrestlers you play as in the game are the ones you start the game as. And that covers all the games that begin with W as in Walter. And now we're going to talk about not only the only game in the library that begins with the letter Z, but also the final game in the entire modified PlayStation library. Zanac X Zanac, released by Compile in 2001, back when the same year when Nintendo GameCube came out. And I think this game only came out in Japan, and I think it's a space shooter like Galaga. Well, that's it. That's all, folks. That's all for my modified PlayStation Mini review. I know it's a long list of games, but I covered them all after one delay. So please don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. And I will see you all next time.